Hey everyone, Token Dave over here, the dorky token black guy that's just trying to get by, and welcome to another edition of Comic Book Character Origins. Here, I will explain the origins of a superhero or villain from the source comic book material, having little or nothing to do with what's been interpreted in the movies or a TV series. So, I explained the origins of Spider-Man in the main Marvel universe, so I find it fitting to talk about the origins of Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe. Now, something I have to bear in mind and let you guys know that this origin is a little bit longer than the main universe, and that is because, like, in Ultimate Spider-Man, they basically gave his first appearance slash origin all in 5 issues. So yeah, this video is going to be a little long, guys. So let's go into it. We start off in Oscorp Industries, where Norman Osborn is using the Oz experiment, his experiment to basically try to improve or replace the super soldier serum, which I'll get into some other time in the future. He's experimenting on a Spider-Man called Arachnid OO, and he is distracted by a call from the lawyers, which he tells his assistant to put the spider away, and the assistant does this, but doesn't fully close the lid. We are then introduced to Peter in a Queens Mall where he's reading, and he gets food thrown at him by Flash Thompson and Kong, the school jocks. And in another table, we see Mary Jane talking with Liz Allen, who Liz wants to go shopping and try some clothes on, but Mary Jane tells Liz that she has schoolwork to do, and Liz calls Mary Jane Brainy Jane, and Mary Jane looks at Peter with eyes of sympathy. Quickly, we see Uncle Ben, who was already at the mall, come up to Peter, and Uncle Ben unintentionally embarrasses Peter by calling Mary Jane over, noticing that Peter actually has a bit of a crush on her, and all. And basically, Uncle Ben also gives an angry glare at Flash Thompson and Kong. The next day, we see that Peter is actually the model student for all of his teachers, doing well in the classes and knowing most of the answers, with the exception of physical education, where the phys ed teacher is frustrated with Peter Parker, who can't shoot the ball into the basketball hoop, which I can relate to because I suffer from BCPB. Black can't play basketball. Anywho, moving on. So after that, we jump to a school trip where. Before we go to the school trip, my fault. We have another scene afterwards where Kong kicks Peter from behind, and when Peter falls on the floor trying to gather his stuff, we are introduced to Harry Osborn, who tries to tell Kong and Flash to lay off Peter for a little bit and everything, but doesn't do so forcefully and everything. And basically, Harry tries to encourage Peter, telling Peter that, hey, he's a smart one. He's got to worry about this for a couple of years, while Flash Thompson and Kong later down the road is going to have already peaked in their lives, while Peter will be a billionaire. And he also reminds Peter that he needs help with homework. So the next panel, we see that Harry is in Peter's basement, and he notices all of Peter's gadgets and formulas, and Harry asks, where'd you get all this cool stuff? And then Peter tells him that it was his father's, and Harry asks, how did his parents die? And Peter tells them that they died in a plane crash. After this, we go to Oscorp Industries, where basically his class is on tour, and the spider that the assistant didn't secure right away escapes and jumps on Mary Jane, and Mary Jane flings a spider over to Peter, who the spider itself lands on Peter, biting him, causing Peter to pass out. Peter wakes up in the bus briefly, and is told that the school informed his aunt and his uncle about it, and Mary Jane is sitting next to him trying to comfort Peter and thank him for basically being a human shield. Peter at home is fast asleep, sleeps through the night, and wakes up the next morning, noticing that he's a little different. Like he has a little more muscle definition. And in school, he actually is walking through the hall, and Kong tries to kick him again. Only this time, Peter quickly reacts and catches Kong's foot and flips him over. In another scene where basically they're at the gym and Peter is trying to shoot a basket, he notices that Flash Thompson is hitting on Mary Jane, and Mary Jane is not comfortable with the attempt, so Peter shoots the ball against the rim, and from the rim it ricochets into Flash, and Peter actually gets mouthy with Flash, and Flash tells Peter to meet him outside after school, which he does, which Peter is ducking all Flash's punches, and then Flash tells Peter to stand still, which Peter does, and catches Flash's punch and breaks his arm. This actually kind of worries and scares Peter, who runs off, and as he's running home, a car is approaching him, and Peter flips over the car, right, and run towards the car, but then he senses something's wrong, and as the driver is getting out, he notices a gun, and Peter runs off. And the driver is actually working for Norman Osborn, who has sent the driver to kill Peter, and the driver tells Norman that Peter jumped over the car, but he can still chase him, and Norman tells him to abort. He wants to observe Peter. Well, Peter gets home, and basically Uncle Ben gets a call from Flash Thompson's parents talking about them threatening to sue the Parkers and everything because of the fight, because of breaking Flash's arm. And Peter gets upset because basically the one time he defends himself, he gets he's actually getting in trouble for it. And then Peter actually just goes into his room and mopes a little bit and notices that basically he doesn't need his glasses anymore, and notices that his muscle definition is a lot more refined. So the next day, they're all in class, and basically he's in class, and the gym teacher asks Peter to join the basketball team since Flash's arm is out of commission. And Flash is upset with this, but Peter joins, and we see that Peter is actually doing very well in the basketball team. And not only is Peter doing well in the basketball team, the kids later go to a wrestling match where basically, this guy named Crusher Hogan, is impressing the crowd, namely Kong and Flash, and the challenge is issued that someone could last in the ring for a few minutes with Crusher or pin him down. Kong tries to enter, but basically the announcer says you have to be 21 and over for insurance purposes. Peter goes home, puts on glasses, a hat, and a disguise, in other words, and enters the ring, pins Crusher, and takes the money, and basically the announcer wants him to unmask himself. Peter doesn't do so, saying that basically he wants to keep himself anonymous, and the announcer asks Peter to come back the next day, which Peter does, but in between then, he actually takes the money and secretly puts it underneath the envelope, the money underneath his door, so that basically Uncle Ben and Aunt May could pay off any legal fees and everything, disguising it as a collection fund that the school took out for Peter. Also, Mary Jane actually asks Peter out, and Peter wants to go out with her, but he says no because he goes back to the wrestling performance that very night, which Peter defeats Crusher Hogan yet again, and the wrestling announcer asks him for a name, and Peter doesn't want to give him a name, and then he just says, give me a stage name, and the announcer just calls Peter Spider-Man. Hence how he got the name Spider-Man. So not only that, the announcer later on, he asks Peter for his address, and Peter is like, listen, just give me cash up front and everything. And then the announcer was like, fine, you want to be mysterious, fine, but have a better costume. And then basically the announcer gives him a bag, and that's how Peter gets the costume in this version. Well, a little bit later, Peter comes home and he sees that his report card, he has a D in his report card, 1A, and a lot of C's. And Uncle Ben and Aunt May get upset with Peter because grades are slipping and he's acting up. Peter, frustrated, leaves the house and goes to Kong's place. And at Kong's place, Kong lets him crash, and Kong throws a party, and a bunch of kids at school are at the party. And Flash Thompson's a little upset that Peter's crashing with that Peter's crashing with Kong. Later, Liz Allen, who had one too many, is making advances at Peter. And as she's making advances at Peter, Mary Jane walks in, sees this, and runs out. Peter runs after Mary Jane, but in the doorway, Uncle Ben is standing right there and basically is telling Peter that he's acting up, what he's doing, and that basically Peter just says, like, he just doesn't want Uncle Ben on his back anymore, which Uncle Ben just says, listen, you're going through a phase, it's fine, you've taken a lot of crap and everything, he understands, but your father told you that your father always knew what to do, and he always felt like, great, to do great things, you're going to have great responsibility, and then Peter brushes this off and everything, and he just wants to be left alone, aka teenage angst. Well, after he runs off a little bit, basically, he's walking near a store, and a robber runs out of the store, and that robber actually goes in Peter's way, and Peter, gets in his way for a little bit, but then just moves out the way, and the store owner says, you could have stopped the guy that tripped him or anything, and Peter just shrugged, saying, you know what, it's not his problem. And on his way home, he laminates that Uncle Ben is actually trying to help him and everything. He realizes that he's been a jerk to his aunt and uncle, that he should explain everything to them. But right when he gets home, he sees the police there, and we find out that someone broke into the house and killed Uncle Ben. And then, it repeats from here. It repeats from the original canon. They encounter the robber at a warehouse. Peter catches them, leads them to the police. But only the difference is after that, Peter is actually running around, basically leaving muggers in a unconscious state, leaving them for the police. And Peter just sees that Mary Jane is waiting for him in front of his house, and Peter cries in Mary Jane's arms. And those are the origins of Ultimate Spider-Man Peter Parker. I know this was kind of long, but man, it's 5 issues worth of things and everything. So, you got any comments or anything? Leave them below. Drop me a like. Subscribe. Ring that bell. And spread this video out. But until then, this has been Token Dave, the dorky talking black guy just trying to get by. And I'll catch all you guys later.